Good evening, everybody. I hope you guys are doing well. I am with one of my dearest friends tonight. I'm always thrilled when I get to hang out with him for an hour and a half or two. If I can turn off the audio on my...
Wait a second. I thought this was a 10-minute show. 2 hours?
No, it's we usually go for about 90 minutes. And then there's an optional 30 minutes if the guest would like to keep going. So, all right. Everybody, welcome to the show. Sorry for that audio blast out there a second ago.
That was me, sorry.
No, that was actually my stupid computer.
I'm always screwing stuff up. Oh.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to give a warm welcome, always a warm welcome back to the channel, Tom Berges from IGrewUpStarWars. Thank you for joining us tonight, Tom.
Hi.
I know that this was kind of a last minute topic, but I thought of it the other day. I don't know what I was doing. I was going through some movies and I was buying some discs, and I just had that thought in my mind of, as much as I love the original Star Wars, life before Star Wars, the entertainment before Star Wars, like, it was a different world. Like, you and I have talked a lot about how Star Wars changed the world, and a lot of people have also made that sentiment. Star Wars changed filmmaking, it changed merchandising, changed all these things. It also changed what people expected from entertainment. But there's this halcyon period that I was not privileged to be alive for, from 1970 to 77, that was before Star Wars, but I was familiar with all the entertainment from that time, because in the early 80s, all of it was in syndication. So I was kind of getting a cram session in 70s entertainment, television and film. So I wanted to talk tonight about life before Star Wars, and I couldn't think of anybody better than you, because you have a great love and affinity for the 70s. You talk a lot about all aspects of the 70s. I know you're close to Plaid Stallions and Brick Mantooth, I believe, and a few other people.
I love Plaid Stallions.
Yeah. So I wanted to just kind of get you here in the studio, and let's just dig into life before Star Wars. So, like, I guess the first question I wanted to ask you before we kind of go into all the clips and stills that we've put together for tonight is, what are your memories of your own life before Star Wars? What was life like in Tom Berges's childhood before Star Wars?
Well, let's make it clear that I was born in 1970, so before Star Wars, that would have made me maybe 7 years. I had 0 until 7. So as far as what I know, and like we were talking about before the show started, a lot of this stuff came into my life fully, or more than it did when I was of the age when that was available. But we'll get into a lot of this stuff, and it's amazing. When I did a kind of a synopsis on what we could or would talk about, there was a lot that I actually was subjected to. So my life as a kid before Star Wars was more TV than I probably thought there was. After looking at a list of 70 shows, I consumed a heck of a lot of this stuff. But I must admit that I'm not an expert in any of it, but I am more than willing to talk about all of it. So,
yep. Okay.
There was a lot of darkness back before Star Wars, and we ate rocks and twigs.
Well,
and then Star Wars came along, and everything, technology, cars, rotary phones, everything was available then, which was amazing.
So it's basically the mainstream archaeologist theory equivalent of how Egypt just sprang from the sand. Okay, got it.
Right.
Well, I wanted to let everybody know that the reason, because I got some questions before, a few hours before the stream was going to start. They saw the thumbnail and they said, how come there aren't any cartoons depicted in this thumbnail? And one of the things I want to make clear is that the 70s are an entire decade. Like, we will not be able to comprehensively cover everything you guys can think of tonight. We're going to be covering just a fraction of it. And that also means
my list is huge, and I don't think we'll get into most of this stuff. So
yeah. And that
what
doesn't.
Michael's trying to say is just chill, and we'll talk about what we're going to talk about.
Yes.
And you're gonna bitch at Michael anyway. It's inevitable. So I have nothing to do with it. I want no part of this crap. But if you have any problems, you send Michael all of your complaints.
I want to let everybody in the chat know that also means that there will be a follow-up episode to this that will focus on, you know, British life before Star Wars, because as I can't cover every nation right now as well, but I will do a British life before Star Wars in film and TV as well. All right. So that being said, let's get into it. So the first one, Tom, since you are the guest of honor, what's the first thing you'd like to bring up for our discussion tonight?
Show or movie?
Either one, your pick, sir.
Well, let's start with the first ones I was exposed to, because of course I was born in 1970. I believe Sesame Street came out in 1969 or maybe 1970.
Yep.
But of course, you know, Sesame Street is going on to this day. So Sesame Street's a great one. I caught the early ones, of course, and there's a lot of I can't speak for Sesame Street these days because I haven't watched it since you know, the early 80s. I would love to know. It'd be interesting to see Sesame Street nowadays, because I'm sure it's far and away more different than how I remember.
This is one of the earliest cast photos right here from the 70s. So there is Sesame Street of the 70s.
Oh yeah. Oh geez. Yeah, you thought of everything. Look at that. There's Bob and Mr. Flooper, and
like you, Tom, I was a kid who grew up on Sesame Street, and
Roosevelt Franklin,
and a lot of those cast members were still there in the early 80s when I was watching. I was born in 78. So I was watching in 79, 80, 81. And Sesame Street had a huge impact on, I think, our entire generation. You know, I remember, you want to date yourself. I still think of, like, I did not grow up on Sesame Street when Elmo was around. So to me, Elmo is like a new character, even though he's now like 30 years old or whatever. To me, he's still a new character. You know, I think of Super Grover and, you know, Big Bird and all those, Oscar, all those characters. I don't think of Elmo.
No. I think the newest. Well, I was around when, you know, if you show the image again.
Oh sure,
folks, you got some friends here that guy right next to Bob, Roosevelt Franklin. He was around for the early years, and then he was gone. Poor guy. I love that guy, but you know, that was kind of our Elmo. Roosevelt Franklin. He was a crazy cat, man. I'm telling you.
Did you ever look into, because I know you really have an affinity for the Muppet Show and Sesame Street and Jim Henson stuff. Did you ever find out, because I've never looked into it, why they decided to retire certain characters or phase them out of the show at certain points?
I wish I would have, and if someone knows in the chat why that might have happened, I sure would love to know. But
okay.
Of course, Mr. Hooper passed away. I think he passed away in the early 80s.
Yep, I remember that episode where they had to address his passing,
which was good for kids to kind of get that information. You know, they treated it really well.
Yeah, nowadays they try to shield them from it. Yeah,
but I mean, with Sesame Street came the Fisher Price Sesame Street playset that I've still got, and there's pictures of me that I still have playing with it when I was maybe 5 or 6.
So
that's fun.
I remember going over to my mom would drop us off with a sort of like professionals whatever daycare, but it was like a independent daycare, and the lady had all of her children's toys because they were already grown up, and her kids all grew up in the late 60s, early 70s, and they had that Sesame Street Fisher-Price. I had never, I mean, I was blown away that existed. You know,
nice. It was comprehensive. I mean, it was basically the whole block. And you had just a ton of figures and a lot of little accessories and a little car, and it even had Big Bird's nest. So it was awesome. So maybe we can throw in some toy talk here too. But
yeah,
Sesame Street had a great Fisher-Price interpretation of the neighborhood.
Yeah, I've got an image of it here that I can pull up, and
cool.
It's an image of the original box, not in great shape, but there is the original box.
There you go.
Yeah, it truly is a comprehensive set. I mean, that is a comprehensive thing right there. So
it's funny to see how the scale of that compared to like a 5-year-old child sitting behind it, because I have pictures of myself sitting behind it.
Yeah.
And my head is just kind of right, you know, just right about there.
Yep.
Slightly over the tops of the buildings there. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah, really that was a great play set.
And it was also back when Fisher-Price built things to an indestructible level of quality. Like that thing's unbreakable.
Yeah, I mean, you could run it over with a truck, it'd be fine. Actually, if the stock market tanks like they say they're going to, I'm gonna probably have to move into mine.
We have a super
That's why
chat.
I took all the furniture out of it, so there's more room for my sleeping bag.
Wicked Person says, thank you for the super chat. He says Roosevelt Franklin was disliked by black mothers for his slangy, streetwise, school-hating persona. Apparently he was too gangsta, according to Wicked. The Roosevelt Franklin actor Gordon was too much of an activist and got replaced with Bald Gordon. Oh, I did not know that. Wow.
Yeah, I heard something about that. Interesting. Roosevelt Franklin. I love that character. So it's for me. It's totally understandable. I mean, now that you say it, but I don't know. To the white kid in Idaho, I thought it was a great character.
Chazilla, thank you for the super chat. Very kind. He says pre-Star Wars was Batman, Planet of the Apes, Godzilla, King Kong, Saturday afternoons, World War II movies, Muppet Show, Emergency, One Adam 12, Land of the Lost, and Once a Year Wizard of Oz, and Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Chazilla, you are getting ahead of ourselves here. We have just started. I guess Chazilla just kind of, that's the show, folks. That's it. I guess we can go home.
All right. Done and done.
Yeah. I'm going to start decorating my, I'm going to put the Sesame Street playset in the backyard and start painting it up. Good night, everybody.
All right.
No, we'll get to those. There's a lot we need to cover here. I think this is going to be like a 6-hour show.
I promise at max, because of both of our time limitations, we'll keep it to 2 hours. And if we have to do a volume 2, we'll schedule a volume 2. So,
well, I have dialysis in about a half an hour, so let's get going on this.
Oh God, if I laughed and you're serious, I'm going to feel real bad.
I'm not serious. Okay. And anybody who does require dialysis, that's just a stupid joke.
All right. Would you like to pick the next, or do you
want?
I'm
the Roosevelt Franklin of the show, by the way.
Venkman, thank you for the super chat. He says, it always seemed to me the reason certain Sesame Street Muppet characters get retired is that the performer had either left the show or passed away and they never got around to recasting. I guess that's possible.
Possibility. I'm gonna have to look up the Roosevelt Franklin backstory. And because I don't think it was, I think it was an African-American puppeteer, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And that would be really interesting to find out. So actually in the chat, who puppeteered Roosevelt Franklin? This is now the official Roosevelt Franklin show.
You know what? Every time Melinda does a Lord of the Rings show, it becomes a Tom Bombadil show rather than just Lord of the Rings. So, you know,
always happens.
It's all good. It's all good.
Yeah.
Where would you like to go next on the map, Tom? Or would you
like?
Well,
let's go. Let's not turn the dial. Let's not change the channel. Let's go with the electric company.
Oh, okay. Okay.
No toys for the electric company, though, strangely enough.
Yeah, well, this was it's interesting that Fisher Price was able to even get Sesame Street toys going because of the very careful regulation at the time around children's toys based on television shows and cartoons. And it may very well be that where Romper Room and certain things got smacked down by the parents groups, for some reason Jim Henson got some kind of strange pass. I don't have any confirmation on how that all played out or what, but we have to acknowledge that that's the case. Now, I have here a very early image of the electric company. This one is going to, I don't even know how this one, if this one's from the 70s or if it goes back into the 60s. But this has got Morgan Freeman and Bill Cosby in there.
Oh, no, this is 70s. Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly when it started. I would think it started probably right around the same time as the Sesame Street did, because Sesame Street, it was created by the children's Children's Workshop.
Yep.
I believe this was part of that kind of family of shows.
This, I believe the electric company was also our introduction to the very first live action Spider-Man. They brought him up.
That's correct.
Yep. And I remember that show. It was interesting that PBS had this very stable of kids programming that went on for decades. You know, they really, I mean, and when they brought on a new show, that show also lasted a really long time. It's like they chose very carefully. So you had Sesame Street and the Electric Company, and then when they brought in the early 80s, they brought in Reading Rainbow. That one also stayed on a really long time alongside all the other children's programming, like Mr. Rogers and all that kind of stuff. PBS they were just a different animal back then. They were, I don't know what they're like now, but back then they really had some kind of, I don't want to call it magic, but they knew what they wanted to provide to the viewer, and they kind of nailed it every time. Like,
for a decade, it was going strong, more than a decade. And then I think maybe things changed when Nickelodeon came on the scene. And that was just kids programming all the time.
Right.
Maybe that's where things kind of lost their grip. Electric Company, apparently, sadly they dropped off the map not long after. I mean, they didn't have a real long run.
Right. But it was long enough.
It was still good. It wasn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't. It didn't last as long as Sesame Street. I don't know what they could have done. Losing you, Michael.
I'm here. Can you see me? I'm here.
Yeah, I can see you. You're just not moving. I can hear you.
Oh, okay. We must be having some.
I think the thing is, I Googled Romper Room when you mentioned it, and now I got all kinds of spam because I went to the wrong Romper Room.
Oh God.
It's not a joke, folks. It's going to be a whole great night of jokes.
Wildstar Studio, thank you for the super chat. He says, Sesame Street toys got around regulations by making them educational toys. The Sesame Street playset had a chalkboard as a token educational item. Interesting. I didn't know that. Very cool. And then Megatron, leader of the Decepticons, thank you for the super chat. He says, in my opinion, The original trilogy is a timeless classic with little flaws, even Luke and Leia being siblings in Revenge of the Sith that ruined that. Yeah, the trilogy of Mr. Rogers, Sesame Street, and Romper Room it's killer. I don't think it can be taught. Sorry, Electric Company, not Romper Room. Why did I say Romper Room? All right. So yeah, the Electric Company ran into the 80s though. Like it wasn't complete.
The Electric Company did? My gosh, I'm gonna blow my face out here.
Let me
I've got to do a Google search. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. Oh no, I'm sorry. I'm incorrect. It ran to 1977.
There you go.
It must have run in reruns because I remember seeing it. Yeah, that must have been it. That must be why.
Because they all did.
Mm-hmm.
There was another show that was just crazy bonkers, and I forgot what it was, and I'm gonna have to do another Vegetable Soup. You remember that one?
Vaguely, very vaguely.
And that was interesting. It was almost, Sesame Street was kind of mainstream. It was for all the kids, and then the Electric Company was cool because it had kind of an urban kind of feel to it.
Right.
But then Vegetable Soup seemed like it had a very New York vibe to it.
Yeah, I'm looking at images here. I'm trying to get one to pull up, and yeah, it has a very different aesthetic. I'll put it that way. Like it's
Vegetable Soup.
Yeah, like I'll bring it up here. Like check this out. This is I mean, man, this is a homespun aesthetic. Unless I'm looking at the wrong show.
Oh God, yeah, that's one of the sub shows or the kind of segments in the show.
Right.
These were just like, I don't know what this was. This was a story about kids who build their own spacecraft, and they go up into space, and they're living this crazy space adventure where they land on a planet, and they talk about kind of racial issues, which was really done really quite well back in the day.
Yeah.
But the thing is, you're dealing with puppets who are puppets, and they're very wooden looking.
Yes.
And then you have human hands for all of the puppets.
So
they look incredibly strange. And if you guys go to the RetroBlasting, you guys later go to the RetroBlasting links for this show, I will do the full run of this particular episodic segment, and it is creepy. It's got depressing music. It's got very strange, depressing characters, and it is just creepy. And when I watched it as a kid, because I mean, what are you going to do when you have your 3 channels in public television? You've got 4 channels to watch, and 3 o'clock when you come home from school, you've got the crazy melancholy puppet show that you have to watch, or you're going to watch, the Carol Burnett show again for the 1500th time, which was already in reruns. But this show was bonkers, and I wish I could remember what it was. Yeah, funny that you put that up there, because that was just an element to the show.
Yeah, I have a little image here that I think reflects what you're talking about with the human hands being integrated into the puppet. Let me see if I can pull that up. It's right here. And there we go.
Yeah. Oh my God. Oh, if I could remember what that was, just a second. You keep going.
Oh no! Just that you are educating me on a show that I thought. I mean, I recognized the title, but clearly I never was exposed to the content growing up.
Well, the funny thing is, there's not a whole lot of kids that it was just a flash in the pan, and if you missed it, you missed it.
Right.
And there's not a few. If you're not my age, or maybe older, you you wouldn't have remembered it, and I don't think they ever showed it again. Maybe they did show it in the 80s, because the funny thing is that they did Vegetable Soup, and I think they released a second story to this weird space travel thing. And I'm actually doing a search, but they toned down the faces and they didn't make them quite as scary looking, and they made the hands, they made them within, they made it a little better as far as scaling and stuff goes. But that was a weird time.
Yeah, it's, I mean, but it was also pleasantly analog. You know, they didn't lean on, obviously they didn't have them to lean on, but what I'm saying is now a lot of these kids shows are just break out a computer, get like 50 graphic artists, cookie cut some animation. Killamagwai, thank you for the super chat. He says, "Bring back the beard. Appreciate you both." I guess he's talking to you, Tom.
I think he's talking to you, Michael.
And then
my wife. The thing is, my wife won't let me do that anymore. I appreciate it though. Now I actually just grew my chin out again, so I'm pretty happy about that.
Megatron, leader of the Decepticons, thank you so much. He says, Sesame Street, Lord of the Rings books, Transformers, and He-Man are what I grew up with before I was introduced to Star Wars. Yeah, I was familiar with Sesame Street, of course, but as far as like all that other stuff, Star Wars hit before all that other stuff for me, given the year of my birth. So, all right.
Let's go back to Alphabet Soup real quick.
Okay.
So this puppet thing within Alphabet Soup was called Outer Scope 1. Okay. So if you want to go watch the complete series of Outer Scope 1, it's on YouTube. Okay. It is batshit crazy and it is horrifying. Well, I mean, when you're a 4-year-old kid and you're watching the show, like I said before, it's a lot to take in. And the thing is, there's no eye movement in the puppets. I mean, there's no live action people. Well, I guess it's live action people because they're puppets, but the puppets just have dead faces and there's no expression. And with a Muppet, you can look around and kind of make scrunchy faces and stuff. But here, this show is just like.
Yeah, I'm noticing that. I just pulled up this image. I assume it's from their homemade spaceship.
Yeah, exactly. This is inside the spaceship, which is just it's horrible. And let's go on to another subject. This is really freaking me out.
All right. What you got? Or do you want me?
I got two of my favorite shows growing up. This was, of course, well before Star Wars. Adam 12, which went away in 1975, and of course Emergency, which went away in 1977. Both great shows. These were actually the predecessors to Chips, of course. Yep. So maybe not an official predecessor of Chips, but these were great. I mean, when you've got Adam 12, which was based on cops in LA. Patrolling the streets of Los Angeles. Yeah, there you go. It was awesome. But the funny thing is about Emergency and Adam 12, they both took place in Los Angeles, and so did Chips. But you never saw any crazy shootings, you never saw kidnappings, you never saw anything like that. Everything was pretty milquetoast, but it was still so fun to watch.
Yeah, what I've always found fascinating about 70s drama television and even the cop shows and action shows is that they were still very grounded. And I mean that in a positive way. Like they were still, compared to what they bring out now with and I know this is already old news, but like David Caruso in every shot, like putting his sunglasses on or whatever and saying some cheeky one-liner. Adam 12 was very, by comparison, it was far more credible, I guess, in many ways. Like in other ways, it was more dated television, but you know what I'm saying. Like it was just more grounded. It was more, and similarly, Emergency. You know, that show to me was, it. You know, it had your classic television format that I actually prefer, where they're contained stories with a really well done problem of the week or challenge of the week, and the characters have to get through it. And you know, stand-up comics and everything used to joke in the cynical 90s and aughts about the whole freeze frame credits thing. But I really wish we could get back to the freeze frame, you know, yellow block font drop shadow credits, you know, like
I love it.
Yeah.
Interesting. If you, I don't know, because you know, when I was a kid, I wasn't taking score, but in Chips, and I'm sure this isn't any different than Emergency or Adam 12. Did they ever pull their gun and shoot anyone in any of these episodes? I don't think so.
I would imagine not, because in the 70s they really had some mores about that at the time. There were these kind of like rails they had to follow. You know, and those carried over.
Bonanza, everybody was getting shot to shit, but
right.
They really kind of reeled it back in Adam 12 and Emergency. So
yep.
Thank God for the 70s. No one was shooting anybody in the 70s. Thank God for that.
Oh no, not at all. And it's these are the kind of shows, like I believe they tried to remake Adam 12 at some point, and I don't even know how long it lasted or if it was successful at all or anything. For those
I couldn't tell you.
Yeah, for those of you who are
I don't care.
Well, so, yeah, me neither. It's just to me, like shows like Emergency, they seem to be ripe targets for the remake factory for some reason. I don't know if it's because I don't know what it is, but so like maybe it's because we still have ambulances today and fire trucks, and we still have police officers. Let's do Hawaii 5-0 again. Here's the cast of Emergency.
Yeah, God bless them.
And for those of you who aren't familiar with Emergency, you may be familiar with the man in the center, who is the club owner in Roadhouse, the one who hires Patrick Swayze to help clean up his club. So, yeah. Good time.
If I was convicted of a crime and my service or how I had to, fill out my days, said, listen, dummy, you're going to need to. You can't have any internet. You cannot have any phone. The only thing we're going to give you is 70s shows. And we're going to plop you on a deserted island, and that's going to be your that's going to be your thing for 10 years. I would just keep my mouth shut, and when no one was looking, I would just get really excited because that would be great. That'd be great. I would have no problem going back to the 70s and never coming back.
I'll try and get the DeLorean working for you. Wicked Person says Shazam and $6 Million Man are my favorites, and Hilarious House of Frightenstein with Vincent Price.
Yes, those were all fantastic.
Wool Hat Demon.
Those actually didn't make it on my list, strangely enough. Did they make it on your list?
I have $6 Million Man and I have Shazam. So we've got 2 out of 3. So, Wool Hat Demon, thank you for the super chat. He says, I think the show you're referring to is Vegetable Soup. I miss the Hot Fudge Show. I don't remember Hot Fudge Show.
We said Vegetable Soup, right?
Yeah, I think this is an older super chat. I'm just reading it out.
Okay.
Stephen Queens, thank you. He says Adam 12 was a Jack Webb production. And then, it's funny, the holdovers, Tom. I was putting together my list, and one of the things that I watched in reruns when I was very, very, very young in the early 80s was Chips. But then when I actually went and looked it up, Chips is not a 70s television show. It started in like 1980 or 81, something like that.
No, it came out. I think it came out in 78.
Did it?
Yep.
Then that means the internet lied.
Everybody go to Google and
oh, you know why it messed me up? I'll tell you why it messed me up. It messed me up because the only date it listed, and I didn't look carefully enough, was May 1st, 1983. So I didn't look at the right part of Google. All right, I'm grabbing a Chips image so that we can talk about that show at some point. Might as well talk about it now.
Yeah, it kind of falls past Star Wars, but that's okay.
Yeah. That's why I didn't. Maybe that's why I didn't grab it. Okay. Then we will omit it.
Yeah. Actually, if you think about it, if you combine Adam 12 and Emergency together, you get Chips.
You get Chips. Yeah. There is one movie that I put in here that was released a few weeks after Star Wars, but the reason I put it in there is because it was being made in 1976, and it is the pinnacle of pre-Star Wars 70s style entertainment, and I did not want to leave it out. We'll talk about it later, but that's The Spy Who Loved Me with Roger.
Oh, Moore.
Yeah. So
James Bond films, yes, of course.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, let's jump to something else. How about we talk about All in the Family real quick?
Oh, perfect. Okay. Yeah. Let me bring up my image here. I've got the cast here somewhere, but they're all
where the days.
All right, where are we? Let's see. I'm having trouble finding my picture. Oh, don't embarrass me.
Sorry, we're going way out of order, I'm sure, for you.
No. It's not order. It's that all these images have different dumb file names that I can't follow because I didn't. Oh, Lord. It's wow. It's actually not. I pulled it, but it's not here. So let me grab one.
Oh, okay.
There's
plenty online.
There's plenty to choose from. All right. So I'm going to grab this one. And make sure that is come on, knock at my door. Let's see.
I don't know any of the lyrics, but I know how this song goes.
You know what I hate about StreamYard is that it tells you that it's pulling in all the stuff, and then it doesn't actually bring in everything, and you check it so that you don't have moments like this where you're like reaching for an image, and because then when you're stuck on the other side of the internet away from your editing computer, it's not fun. So all right, can we please find an image that isn't a W? All right, you know what, let's just see if this works. Maybe it'll work. Nope, it won't. I know what I can do though. I can break the system. Stand by. So when you were watching All in the Family back in the day, Tom.
Yes, very young. That's one of my earliest TV memories.
When you were watching that at the time, everybody looks back at it now and they say, it was groundbreaking and it was this and it was that. Did it feel groundbreaking in the moment? Or is that a retrospective kind of assessment of the show?
It's a retrospective kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because the thing is, I mean, I guess it was retrospective in the fact that, you had this Archie Bunker was quite the thing is, Archie Bunker would not be able to have any kind of television or there you go. Yeah, there's Meathead. He's still a meathead. So Archie Bunker was a racist, blue collar, dare I say, lovable guy that could never ever have a Twitter account these days.
Right.
Yeah. I think Edith could.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
And King Eric, we will be getting to the show where the guy said dynamite. That's called Good Times. I have the images of that. Well, assuming StreamYard pulled them in. So, it's it's a show that stayed in reruns and syndication. I think there's even a Pluto TV channel called the All in the Family channel. I think you can just watch All in the Family all day. Okay. Yeah, and I think they also rope in its many spinoffs as well to fill the 24-hour cycle. But
let's throw in the toy here now. There was a toy that was created for All in the Family. It was Archie Bunker's grandson.
Really?
And you could tell it's a grandson because there was it wasn't a Bobby type bottom down there, if you know what I mean.
Wow.
See if you can find that picture.
So it's a you said it was a toy?
It was a baby doll type thing for the little kitties.
Oh, I found it. You're not even joking. It literally
post that, please.
Archie Bunk. Oh, this is.
Post that picture there.
This is some nightmare fuel right here. Good Lord. Let me see if I can pull up an image here. And yep, there we go. Save that. Gonna have to. They've come up with all these dumb new extensions for files. It's like they've gotten away from JPEG.
Just do a JPEG and just keep it, please.
Yeah. They're like WEP and. See, it didn't. Let's rename it again. So, JPEG.
Oh, you have to. Okay.
Use JPEG. Thank you. I'm having because what it is you end up having to rename all of the. There you go. You end up having to rename all of them because.
Oh well, that's yeah. Well, yeah. That toy is safely covered up because that toy has an accurate groin area.
Yes, I was seeing that. He has a little friend, and they didn't hold back with that one. I don't know why they would do that. That's very interesting. It's such an odd choice. Like. I know, and I'm actually shocked that Mego's name isn't on this because Mego licensed everything back then. They didn't have any reticence for anything. They thought everything would sell. But yeah, it just shows how popular the show was that they thought they could market a baby doll off of it on its own. Talk about marketing. There you go. That's there's the toy that came from All in the Family. Yep. Man, I don't know if we need to talk about that any further. we can totally ride right past that now. But for those of you who aren't familiar with All in the Family, how many spinoffs were there from that show, Tom? There was there was Chips, there was Hawaii Five-0. Mm-hmm. I don't know. There were quite a few, but not as many as Happy Days, which we'll get into later. But Happy Days had more spinoffs than I think so. Yeah. Okay. But let's go to. Hey, do you want to talk about? The big one for the 70s? Sure. Let's talk about the Brady Bunch a little bit. Okay. We're talking about the Brady Bunch. That was one that I did see copiously in reruns as a kid. I think it's still in reruns, actually, to this day. That would not shock me. It was a staple of TV, like Gilligan's Island was on syndication for me. Like it was day and date. Like you could always get home, from preschool when and I knew that the Brady Bunch was coming on. But there it is. Yep. The house alone is burned into my memory. It's branded onto my brain. And I would say meet me in the rec room, Michael, and we'll I'd run to the corner of the house. Just don't have to go to poo-poo in the bathroom because you're gonna have a real hell of a time. It's because the house didn't have toilets. So it was like the Enterprise.
Yeah, no toilets in the Brady Bunch house. Maybe the thing is, maybe Alice had her little room back in the back. Maybe she had a toilet. I'm not sure. But I know the kids' shared bathroom did not have a toilet.
How did you feel about the fact that while this show was a family-friendly comedy, how did you feel about them straight up sending it up in the Shelley Long movies of the 90s?
I don't, when I was, because the thing is, it was a parody of itself.
Right.
Back by then, But back, it's funny. I'm saying, a lot. It's funny because when I was a kid watching this family was the family that you wanted to hang out with.
Yeah.
This is the family that you wanted to go and have, Alice make you a sandwich in.
Yep.
So, but when you think of the remakes, I think the remakes were done well, but there was definitely kind of a backhanded kind of attitude toward.
That was the problem that I had with a lot of this stuff, was that a lot of those movies in the 90s that pulled from these shows and adapted them, they were just making fun of them.
Yeah, pretty much.
And
sadly,
like the only ones where I felt like it worked were things that were already pretty zany. So like, I almost feel like Addams Family, the movie, the one back then, not the ones now, but the one back then, was more what's the word I'm looking for? Not reverent, but it loved the show it was based on far more than, say, Starsky and Hutch and Brady Bunch and things like that were just straight up saying, look how dumb these shows were.
Yeah. Same goes for the Dukes of Hazzard, really.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, the whole cast of the Dukes of Hazzard from the 70s and 80s, or the 80s, I guess, they hated it and they resented that. But why even make these shows at all? If you're introducing a new audience, fine, a new audience. Let them go back and watch, the episodes that were back in, from 1978. You don't need to make a show with Johnny Knoxville and the rest of those guys.
No,
you don't need to, because it's already there. It's already there, set in stone. You've got season upon season of great wholesome shows. I guess you could call it wholesome, because the television now isn't worth any of my time.
Right.
I couldn't tell you what shows are on. Is there still like formatted shows nowadays on TV? I wouldn't know.
Really. I read an article recently that talked about how quirky comedy has killed the situational comedy. In other words, the comedy has all gotten so like snap zoom and people looking at the camera and very just like 30 Rock type stuff that they say it's killed creativity and versatility within the situational comedy genre. Like it's I just read that article like a week ago. Like it was pretty sobering. And that wasn't just an opinion article from some geek website. That was on a major publication. I just can't remember which one it was. But we're now in this kind of nadir era of televised comedy. Like it's all just kind of very pat and very the same as far as style and delivery. Yeah,
it's boring. Back in the 70s, you looked forward to shows, and it was like it was something that you talked about at school the next day.
Yep.
It was big, and the thing is, everybody was watching it. Everybody was watching the Brady Bunch, and everybody loved Charlie's Angels and Happy Days and stuff like that. So yeah, but I mean, going back to the Brady Bunch, it was such a warm, wholesome show, and you were at the end of the show, you learned something that hopefully you could take with you for the rest of your days.
Right.
And you could secretly fall in love with Carol, which was okay.
Yeah.
Or Alice. If that's your thing. I don't know. Alice was kind of.
Hey, you know what, though? She was well loved by the entire audience, which,
She was sexy and she could make a meatloaf. I mean, what's wrong with that?
That's true. I was looking at these, Tom, and I was pulling all the visuals together and everything, I was noticing how balanced, and I mean that in a positive way, like how balanced the TV show premises and casts were. So, like for every Brady Bunch, you had a Jeffersons and, things like that. I don't know, that it seemed like they were willing to foray into new territory and kind of take risks. And what's interesting to me is that now a lot of snide critics look back and they say, oh, all of that was just formulaic television that really got bad by the mid 80s. And I'm like, well, maybe in the 80s they got tired with some of the premises by the end of the decade. But in the 70s, when I'm looking at these still images of these cast members in these shows, okay, so they're all based around families, but the families are all in totally different situations. The tones are completely different,
Exactly. And that is something that we don't focus on nowadays, family.
Yeah.
And the thing is, if you think about it, let's go back. Let's do Brady Bunch, Happy Days. You can go down. I can go down the whole thing. Jeffersons. Those were all morality plays.
Yep.
You got something out of it, and hopefully you learned something at the end of the day that you could, like I said before, you could take with you and maybe make you a better person.
Yeah.
Nowadays, I don't see anything, and something that comes to my mind now, this Bloody Velma show that's now on HBO Plus or whatever. I hear it's just a complete shit show.
Right. Yeah.
And that's something that your kids are gonna watch. God forbid your kids watch this stuff. It's not for kids, I know, but
yeah.
The thing is, there's nothing wholesome. And when one of the viewers said Shazam, and the Secrets of ISIS, that kind of thing. What an amazing show where you're actually, learning how to be a better person and hopefully grow up to be a responsible adult. That is, I took a lot of that to heart because I watched all these shows and I remember, I'll do something good in my life that I think is good.
Yep.
And I'll go, I'm a better person because I know that, Captain Marvel told me to be a better person back in 1975.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
I was the same way. I've told you before. I took my heroes. I watched my heroes like they were a guidebook. It wasn't just surface entertainment for me. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. It's too bad that doesn't exist any longer.
No, everything got real cynical, and now they've gone past cynical to we're uncomfortable with genuine sentiment. So now everything is undercut by dry humor, sarcasm, jokes. And again, I like sarcasm where appropriate. Excuse me, but I'm not somebody that needs it thrown at me like a fire hose in television, where I'd like to see some stories where people do get emotional. I mean, while I am a sarcastic person as far as my humor is concerned, I also have genuine emotions. But if you were like a human being, like a 500,000 years from now and you were watching television from right now, you would assume that our society had no genuine emotions at all besides sarcasm and anger. Like those would be the only two that you would zero in on, because these characters now aren't comfortable, well, the writers aren't comfortable creating characters that have something sentimental to say.
The problem is, Michael, this is a reflection of our society, and we are heading for destruction.
Hey, everybody!
I truly mean that.
Yeah, no, I know. No, it's why it took me 10 years to get to 100,000 subs, because nobody wanted to listen to that message. That's okay though. We stuck to our guns, and
that's okay. Happy Days.
Yes, Happy Days. Another one.
Happy Days, great show.
Was one of my.
Let's. I keep getting dumped, Michael. I'm sorry, and then you come back, and I'm trying to recover and not look like I don't know where I am.
This is just streaming lag. It's nothing is perfect in this technology. All right, so let me grab Happy Days.
Are you going to grab Fonzie as he's wearing his blue members only jacket or his black leather jacket?
Which one would you prefer?
Oh, give me 74 Fonzie.
Is that with the blue jacket?
Yes.
All right, I can do that. Wow, I've got an image here where he doesn't even have a jacket on. Or no, it's like a khaki jacket almost.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like a white. You know what this is though? I bet you this was like a black and white photo that got digitally colorized.
Oh,
what do you want to bet?
Yeah,
you know what? Though? I'm actually having a problem finding a picture of him in the blue jacket.
Okay, well that's fine. Let's just go with Fonzie. We all know and love.
All right, I can do that. Here we go. Survey says.
There we go. Well, Joni's pretty young in this one, so my God, look at Patsy. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is probably 1976, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Great show. I mean, when this came out, this was one of the ones that you did not miss. And this was definitely one of the ones that you talked about on the playground. This was great. That was such a great show, and everybody wanted to be Fonzie. You know, back when Star Wars came out, everybody wanted to be Han Solo or Princess Leia, or take your pick, Luke Skywalker.
Yep.
But when you were watching Happy Days, everybody wanted to be the Fonz.
This was one of my earliest memories of television.
There we go.
This is one of my earliest memories of television.
Yeah, this is. Mm-hmm. Yeah. See, this was before the leather jacket there with the Fonz.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. I have. I think I missed.
The funny thing about the show is it started out as a show mostly about Richie.
Uh-huh.
But the Fonz was such a character and such a beloved character he became. It didn't take long for the Fonz to really kind of take over the show in a huge way.
Yeah, he was, and I don't mean this in the way it sounds. What I'm saying is that it's the same phenomenon as what happened when the character of Steve Urkel took over Family Matters. Like same
thing.
Yep. Wicked Person, thank you for the super chat. He says, news from high school, modern teens love sentiment and are taking refuge in Toy Story, Princess Bride, and 90s Disney. They're not much into modern stuff either. That's interesting.
Sweet God. Thank God.
Brian Dillingham, thank you for the Dillinghamism. He says, trademarked. Normally he doesn't have a message in there, so just good to see you here, sir. This was one of my first TV memories was Happy Days.
Well, it's a good one. It's a good one.
Yeah. Now, another one of my first TV memories, and this was probably Tom, this was probably my first television show that I was avidly wanting to watch. Like as a little kid, I was like, I want to get home and see this show. Was this one.
Diana Prince had a little trouble reaching you, so she asked me to keep her appointment.
What are you doing in here?
Right?
Linda Carter is, my God.
And I loved that show growing up. Like that, I think I'm pretty sure that even though I was aware of Superman and Spider-Man in my very early youth, Linda Carter, her Wonder Woman show was the first one I saw in live action. Like that was, Wonder Woman was the first hero I saw in live action on TV.
She's fantastic. And that is the quintessential, like, you know, Reeve is the quintessential Superman. I mean, she is the quintessential Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Hands down. Hands down. Yeah. Yeah. But I wanted to make sure that we gave a little salute to that show because we've got a whole group of television shows here that we're about to launch into that the reason I wanted to start with Wonder Woman, Tom, was because it had the least amount of merchandising compared to the shows we're about to discuss.
Strangely enough.
And I didn't know. So I guess we can make a choice. Do we want to talk about Planet of the Apes or do we want to talk about the Bionic franchise first?
I have to admit, and people might be shocked by this, we might as well just get Planet of the Apes over with because I didn't do a whole lot of Planet of the Apes when I was a kid.
Okay.
I don't know why. I don't know. That definitely should have been on my radar.
Right.
But I don't know. You know, living your kid life in Idaho, some things just get missed, I suppose.
Dan Geister wants to ask, did you see American Graffiti before Star Wars?
Me? How about you? Did you watch it before Star Wars?
I've seen it, but I did not see it before Star Wars, no.
Star Wars was my second movie I'd ever watched in my complete and total existence. My first movie that I ever watched, and this is Tom Berges trivia here, the first movie I ever watched was Clarence the Cross-Eyed Lion. And the second one was Star Wars. So there you
go. Scott Knudsen, thank you for the super chat. He says, we were innocent enough not to notice the difference between Fonzie and actual bikers.
Yeah. That's okay. That's bikers back in the day, those guys were scary.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's funny. Society was really strange back then. I remember. Oh, there we go. It's society was funny back in the day. Maybe it was regional or something. But my dad, when he was back in the 70s, he had a beard, big black beard.
Yeah.
And of course, he was a doctor. He was an anesthesiologist. So he was a well-to-do fella. But when we, rolled into town with the camper and no one knew who he was, just having a beard back then in some regions of the United States, people thought you were up to no good. So funny side note, but that reminded me when we were talking about bikers back in the 70s, because I think bikers back in the 70s, they created, there was an aura to, anybody who rode a motorcycle back in the 70s that wasn't a kid on a dirt bike.
This whole evening, Tom, that we're talking about this, and it's important, I think, for everybody in the chat to remember that, like you were talking about a second ago, how you had 4 channels to choose from. Most people only had those 4 channels to choose from. And so, like you were saying, everybody wanted to talk about those shows the next day at school or the next morning, at work.
Sure.
There was like a community experience around all the different television shows because everybody was watching the same things, and now we're fractured and splintered. You know, you can't show up at work tomorrow and be like, hey, did you watch Yellowstone? And the other person goes, oh, I don't watch Yellowstone, I watch Wednesday or whatever. And another person's like, oh, I don't have that streaming service, I watch this. It's become completely splintered. So like Happy Days, for example, you know, that was one where everybody saw the episode the night before and we could all talk about it.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. But as far as Planet of the Apes goes, Planet of the Apes was going strong in movies and TV in the 70s. It was in many ways like Star Trek in the 90s had movies going on and it had television shows. Planet of the Apes had that going on in the 70s, and this is an image from the TV show that also starred Roddy McDowall. Instead of Cornelius, he was the same makeup, but he was called Galen.
Got it. Yep.
And he was trying to help these two astronauts avoid the wrath of the apes and get captured. He believed in their, you know, he believed in their want or right to get away. And it was, you know, classic 70s television. It was problem of the week. You know, will Galen get the humans out of the next jam, and or will the humans get Galen out of the next jam? It was the, you know, the, aside from seeing some of the same locations that they would use for Dukes of Hazzard and other things, it was really, really well done TV. It's a shame that it didn't last longer.
Yeah, that tree back there was also featured in Chips, Dukes of Hazzard, and the $6 Million Man.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Really good show though. I have it on DVD.
Izzy, that's good stuff.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Venkman, thank you for the super chat. He says Mego did put a 12-inch Linda Carter Wonder Woman doll out, but they didn't clear the likeness rights and got in trouble for it. So they replaced it with a generic Wonder Woman. Yeah, I've seen the 12-inch Wonder Woman doll, and there was even a Diana Prince outfit you could buy for it to change her clothes and stuff. But that was really the extent of it. Whereas Planet of the Apes had this massive Mego toy line that spanned all the way from the movies into the TV show. And Mego really capitalized on that. They had play sets and vehicles and everything.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, sorry, Venkman, we didn't get into the toy. There was absolutely a Wonder Woman action figure.
Yeah. And then we have a super chat here from Scott Knudsen. He says Planet of the Apes was one of Mego's best lines for sure, right there alongside superheroes and Star Trek. Yeah, it really was. I wish I had more of them. The only one I have is Cornelius/Galen, and I've never looked closely enough at the color of his shoes to determine which one he technically is. So, yeah.
Let me backpedal here real quick, and we don't have to spend any more than what I say about it here. But alongside Adam 12 and Emergency, there was a show called SWAT, and SWAT did have action figures. Early 70s. And as far as that goes, between those three shows, SWAT, I believe, was the only one to create some kind of toy or action figure or what have you.
I haven't. You know what's funny? I have heard of that show, but it's not one that stays in my memory. But I just pulled an image of it here. I need to go find this show. This show looks cool.
Yeah, it was pretty badass for the day.
Mm-hmm. Robert Urich, man.
Yeah, there's all these shows were great. I mean, doing a little research today, I watched the opening credits of Airport, 1970, and that really got me going. I want to watch that. I want to watch the whole Airport series again, but hopefully we get to that at the end here.
Oh yeah. I'll pull that down now so we can see. All right, so where are we? We're in the middle of all kinds of just 70s-ness at this point. Oh, you know what we haven't talked about yet, Tom? Shockingly enough, in all this, and maybe that there was a reason for it, but we haven't talked about the Muppet Show.
Oh, we were going to get to that, but we can talk about it now.
Oh no. We can wait. I knew you'd have.
Well, we don't have. I don't have a list. I'm just kind of rolling down my list, and the thing is, before we started this, we didn't compare lists.
Oh, that's fine by me. So that's
okay.
I'm open to whatever. So
okay.
What you got on your list next then?
Let's keep it in television shows. We did Happy Days. My parents watched Hogan's Heroes.
Oh yeah.
Show.
Yeah. I was shocked to find out that show lasted into the 70s when you told me, because I grew up watching it in reruns in the 90s. And I always just assumed it was a straight up 60s TV show.
Yeah, it ended in 1971, I believe. So, yeah. It's interesting premise. Nowadays, nowadays you could probably. Could they do a remake of Hogan's Heroes nowadays?
I don't. I mean, I think with the way people have gotten so serious about the events of World War II, it might be a really hard sell. I mean, I'm trying to get an image up here, but it's,
when you throw in 1930s Germany, you probably don't want to do that.
Yeah, it's one that I loved growing up. I mean, I watched it religiously for quite a while. But it's
fantastic characters though.
Yeah, for those of you that don't know, the few of you that don't know in the chat, Hogan's Heroes is a comedy in a POW camp in World War II, and it's all about the Allies always getting one up on the Germans in every episode, and it is a laugh track comedy. The funny trivia about that is that the actor who plays Colonel Klink had Jewish heritage, and he took the role with the promise that Klink would never win. So that's why he was like, as long as Klink never wins, I'm happy to do it. And they were like, oh yeah, we don't plan for Klink to ever get one over on the other characters. And he's like, great, let's do it.
Yeah. Perfect. I know nothing.
And that character of Schultz was actually inspired by Schultz from Stalag 17 with William Holden, I believe. The character that was in that POW camp drama. Yeah.
Well, this apparently takes place at Stalag 13.
Oh yeah, that would make sense because Bad Luck 13. So yeah. Yep.
Interesting. I don't know. Did they use? I heard that there was some kind of talk that they used actual uniforms for.
They probably did, because the beginning of the production was close enough to the time when the surplus stores were still filled with that stuff. When I interviewed Deborah Nadelman, who did the costuming for Raiders of the Lost Ark, she told me straight up that the only German uniforms in that movie that weren't original were the ones that were tailored up for the principal characters, like Dietrich, the guy. Wolf.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
But all the other in that, and she said, but soon after Raiders of the Lost Ark, she said, like by the mid to late 80s, so ostensibly Last Crusade, for example, they were having to make everything from scratch because the supply had finally been exhausted. Like it was all gone.
Wow. Yeah.
Yep.
Makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh.
Yeah.
Anyway, great show. If you haven't seen it, it did have a laugh track, which is bizarre.
Yep. It was a staple of the time. I mean,
No, things are much different now, for sure.
Yeah. KBA, thank you for the super chat. He says, loving the chat. There is a really fun Linda Carter Wonder Woman Bionic 6 crossover comic written by people who clearly enjoyed the shows. Well, that sounds like fun. I'd love to see it. As long as the artwork is good and they get Lindsay Wagner and Linda Carter spot on, then I like it. Yeah. Speaking of, so we've got you. So you said you got Hogan's Heroes on your list, and what else right around there?
Well, it's different. We can go. Let's transition right into the Jeffersons.
Okay.
It's a little clunky transition, but that's okay.
It's okay.
Did you know that the Jeffersons lasted up until 1985?
Oh yeah, I remember that show on primetime in my youth. Absolutely.
Wow.
Yep. It's
I don't think George up until the day he passed away, he didn't age a minute.
No, he did not. He looked the same all the way up until his passing. Yeah. The man never aged.
Fantastic, amazing.
And I remember as a kid seeing I can't remember his name in the show. The name of the tall guy behind him in this image over his right shoulder.
Yeah.
When he would show up in other productions of other shows or other movies or things back then, I just remember as a kid always being excited that I recognized somebody from another television show. Like that was the beginning of me figuring out that actors were in other things. And so I was always like, oh, it's the tall guy from the Jeffersons, but he's in another thing.
I always get a kind of looking at this image, I always get kind of a weird Fawlty Towers kind of vibe.
Yep.
Do you think there was I don't know what came first, of course, but I wonder if maybe not.
I wouldn't be shocked. I certainly wouldn't be shocked by that. Because Fawlty Towers, that had to have been let me look that up. I should know that by heart, but I don't know the release date. Fawlty Towers was September 19th, 1975, first episode. Final episode, October 25th, 1979. So,
so they kind of ran kind of parallel to each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Boy, that would have been a cool crossover.
Yeah. You run the bed and breakfast. We'll run, what was it, the laundromat or something like that?
George and Wheezy go to England.
That's right. That would have been really funny, actually.
Yeah. And I think from here, what did you? Was there a crossover between this show and Good Times?
If there was, I'm not aware of it. I don't. But I do have the cast photo from Good Times.
There you go.
That for the person who asked, this is the show with the guy that says Dynamite. But Good Times was, while it was a comedy, it was almost like a dramedy. Like it had moments that are well known these days to still be more dramatic in impact. I can't remember if Jefferson's. I mean, all these shows had moments of gravitas. But I can't remember if Jefferson's had as much of that going on as this show did. This show went beyond situational comedy into almost like social commentary.
I agree. All fantastic actors, really.
You
can't do any better than this, and that's 70s as far as shows go. It was so diverse. It was so fantastic. There was so many ideas and lifestyles that a dumb kid in Idaho was subjected to.
Yeah.
What a fantastic opportunity to be alive within that time frame where you could watch, and get an idea for lives that you probably wouldn't see otherwise because you never left your hometown,
Yep. And I believe the father in this show, I think somebody's asking if the father in this show was in the miniseries Roots as well. I can't remember.
Yes,
he was. Okay. Yeah. And then he would go on to be in, I believe, Die Hard 2. So I think.
And Coming to America too.
That's right. Definitely Coming to America.
FYI, I would kill for that shirt. That is a badass shirt.
You talking about the sort of velour one?
That crushed velour. That just looks like a big comfy towel. The older I get, that's I need comfy. I need comfy in my life.
That we will mark the moment where Tom, the host of I Grew Up Star Wars, transitions into all terry cloth clothing, where it's like suddenly you're wearing, where you're wearing like snap button terry cloth shirts and stuff. Yeah.
Yep. Anyway, great shows.
Megatron, leader of the Decepticons, thank you for the super chat. He says, I despise modern cynical Hollywood. I'll never accept all these mean-spirited reimaginings of classic heroes. Luke from the original Filmation, He-Man, and Optimus Prime from G1 will always be my heroes. Yeah, they had genuine impact. And Michael Hinkson, thank you for the super chat. He says, hello, Michael and Tom from a cold and snowy Reno. Great subject. I was born in 1974. Most memories before Star Wars were mostly $6 Million Man, Wonder Woman, Chips, and Gilligan. Yep. Yeah. Gilligan was heavily in rotation in the reruns at that point, for sure.
No doubt.
Yep.
That's one I didn't put on my list, strangely enough. But we can talk about Gilligan's Island if you want.
Oh, I was actually hoping to have time for us to discuss your inclusion, because I had forgotten about it and I felt stupid when I saw it on your list. Was MASH.
Well, MASH came out in 1972, so that would be right in the era of non-Star Wars programs.
Yep.
Yeah, this of course was derived from the movie MASH.
With that was a Robert Altman film, I believe. Yep.
Yeah, which came out in my God, 1969 maybe.
I think so. Yeah, 69 or 70, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
This show was the one where, as a kid, I knew it was a comedy, but I didn't have enough knowledge or context to appreciate what was going on. And so all I would hear is that very maudlin opening theme with the helicopter. And I knew that it was like a show that I didn't understand. And so that was when I would like go play with my toys until bedtime, kind of thing, when it would come on.
It was a little heavy for a kid, I think. There were there was mostly subject matter that was definitely adult.
Yep.
But I mean, really, Alan Alda, the Hawkeye character, all these characters were really actually quite endearing.
Yep.
So, if a child put in a little effort, you could understand the themes and stuff. It wasn't that hard. I really loved MASH. I watched MASH a lot. My parents loved MASH too.
Oh yeah, like I would watch episodes. Like I saw footage from it, in my youth, and I remember watching it and hearing the laugh track and all that kind of stuff. But I just knew that like I was only getting the jokes sort of like in a bottle. Like I did not have the concept that it was the Korean War. I did not know what the Korean War was, that kind of thing. Yep. So. Yeah, but it was a great. I have it now.
Yeah, Frank Burns was. It was pretty lighthearted, but it wasn't too hard to appreciate it, even as a kid. So which was good.
Yeah, and I have the whole DVD set now. Like I love the show now. Yeah, but yeah. Okay, so we got MASH. We are, you know what, Tom? For some reason, and I don't know why, but for some reason, we have been dancing around the $6 Million Man all night, and I don't know why.
We've been tiptoeing around it. I know. Yeah.
I know.
Maybe we should talk about it now.
I know it was a big one for you. I mean, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure this was a big show for you as a kid, wasn't it?
Yeah. Oh my God. The intro was, they just sucked you in. Even when you were a kid, the intro, even now, not as a kid, because of course you were hooked as a kid, but watching the nowadays, you could just, it sucks you in to this day. And what an icon.
Oh yeah. like I was talking to Melinda the other night about
and
how
what a fun show too.
Yeah, and how much I miss intros from shows. I like it when TV shows set up a flavor, like when they set up a kind of tone for the audience to latch onto. I think we lost Tom. Tom, did we lose you? Oh, you there? Okay, you're back.
I just freeze in place when that happens, and hopefully people don't notice.
I just kept going.
Sorry, I missed about 15 seconds of what you might have said.
I was just simply saying that Bionic 6 or no, Bionic 6, that $6 million man, that $6 million man was it was so culturally impactful at that time. It was what's the word I'm looking for? It was, I mean, it inspired an entire Kenner toy line that extended over, and then it inspired 2 spin-off shows, one of which, Bionic Woman, was very successful as well.
Right.
Endless TV special movies throughout the next decade. It was a phenomenon.
There was a spin-off that a lot of people don't know. It was the Bionic Guinea Pig that was released in '82, but actually it never made it past the test audiences. Thank God for that.
I know that didn't they try a Bionic Dog show? Wasn't there a Bionic Dog?
Maybe.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
Oh, I thought there was.
That was a horrible joke on my part.
Well, no, but I think I'm kind of feeling like there was a Bionic Dog show attempt, but I don't know.
Well, I remember The Littlest Hobo from Canadian television. Hardly a bionic dog though, but cute nonetheless. I digress.
I have some. I have a string of clips here that I've put together that I dedicate to Tom for being here tonight. That are brief clips from $6 Million Man and the Bionic Woman with a kind of continuity through them.
Sweet Jay. I'm looking forward to it.
It's very brief. It's only 31 seconds long, but
okay.
I think everybody will appreciate it. So here we go.
Oh, boy, Steve said you were big, but this is ridiculous.
I mean, John Saxon in his prime. They just had ambition with these shows, and they knew. It almost reminds me of British filmmaking of the late 70s, early 80s, where the craftsmen had been in the business for so long, they knew how to make something look more production polished than they had the money for. They knew the tricks. They knew how to make things sell. They knew how to sell a special effect or a stunt or something like that. And and yet at the same time, it was all in camera. So your eye wasn't, thinking that there was something wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah. When you look at it now, it's like, oh God, that's hokey. But it's still, it makes me want to run outside and start throwing boulders around with my pants pulled down. But that's just me. Thank you for the Bionic Bigfoot highlights.
That's
I know
right.
That was for me, and I appreciate that.
Absolutely. I personally, I still haven't added it to my collection, but I want to have a Steve Austin Kenner doll and a Lindsay Wagner. I would really like to have a Jamie Summers as well for my collection. I just haven't pulled the trigger on it yet. But what a great toy line. I remember my next door neighbors, they had slightly older sons, and they had the Capsule, and they had Steve Austin, and he had his red tracksuit with the eye you could look through and all that stuff. It was a neat toy line.
I had the red jumpsuit Steve Austin.
Mm-hmm.
And sadly, the only thing I have left of that action figure is one shoe.
Really?
So I'm really kind of Between you and me, I would love one of those figures again. I would love to get a vintage packaged, maybe unpackaged. That'd be fine too.
Were the shoes interchangeable on each foot?
Or no. There was a left and right.
Okay. Wouldn't it be kick-ass if we could find you a complete Steve Austin but for that shoe?
I'd have to find the shoe now.
No,
but I know I have it. I know I have the shoe.
Oh, dude, if you locate that shoe and know where it is and you have it and you set it down, that will start the clock. And dude, I promise you, I will not stop until I find you a complete Steve Austin, but for that shoe.
I'll see if I can find it later. I will. I'll make
okay.
it. I'll make it sure. And again, if you ever lose we're getting sidetracked here, but if you ever lose another a Lego piece, vintage Lego piece,
okay,
come to me first. I'll see if I can find it for you.
You got a pile? You have a stash?
I do. Yeah, you have no idea.
I couldn't believe it. I'm always very careful, but that thing snapped like a graham cracker. I mean, it bap. I was like, oh my god.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, with the older we get, our vertebrae will start snapping too here soon.
Master Son 42, thank you for the super chat. He says, Freudian slip, you secretly love Bionic 6. I knew it. No, I've had my head buried in it. Daniel Geister, thank you for the super chat. He says, Lost in Space, Star Trek, Twilight Zone, something else new or in reruns, any sci-fi shows you always wanted to catch before Star Wars. Well, we talked about one that I'll bring up here since it's been asked. Just let me get through these super chats. King Eric the Greatest, thank you. He says, I had some Star Trek records. Who had them also? I did not have any Star Trek records myself.
I didn't either.
Let's see. King Eric the Greatest asks, who watched Star Trek the animated series? If so, do you consider it canon? I watched it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yep.
I think it was good enough to be canon.
Absolutely.
Yep. All right, let's see. I think I'm caught up on those real quick, but let me just make sure. Wicked Person, thank you for the super chat. He says, I've got 2 Steves and an Oscar with briefcase. Bigfoot is out of my price range. Yeah, I hear Bigfoot.
Yeah.
I hear he's really expensive. Is that true?
How much is Bigfoot going for?
I'd
like to know.
Yeah.
Someone put it in the chat and tell me.
Scott Knudsen.
For mint.
Scott Knudsen, thank you for the super chat. He says, another impact of streaming is that days matter less. Thursday is no longer Buck Rogers Day. Although I love having shows like The Expanse on demand, we've lost a unifying element in our culture. Yeah, we have. We really have. That is very true. Wildstar Studio, thank you for the super chat. He says, John Saxon was required by an obscure California law to be in every TV show during the 70s. That is not incorrect. Oh,
that's a good thing.
We have it right here. Atari Boy says Bigfoot go for $802,000.
God, nice avatar, Atari Boy. By the way, that's awesome.
He says it's loose. He must be fragile. Is that the reason?
No, it's probably just.
Maybe they. Well,
the thing is, they made millions of these things, so
right.
I think kids just played with them until they disintegrated.
Right. Yeah. So that's I have an unfulfilled fascination with that merchandise, and I have not pulled the trigger on it yet. And I feel like the next few years I better do it before I have to take out a second mortgage just to get one doll. So.
I remember when I had the backpack that that came, or I think it was an expansion by itself. It was a backpack that you could pull it had a little cell that would pick up local AM stations.
Really?
Yeah, so it was very, very weak. But if you can imagine a little Tom laying in his bed listening to, the nearest AM station, at 10 o'clock when he should be sleeping, getting ready to go to school in the morning. That was me.
I pulled this brief clip because I feel like since Bigfoot was such a big part of the Bionic Man and Bionic Woman mythology at the time, I did want
a great choice too.
A very good choice. I wanted to ask you, Tom, because I looked up some other information about this, and I couldn't find specific information. But this is a film from 1970s poster. It's called Bigfoot. This is 1970. And then, of course, there was a film that you mentioned on your list called Legend of Boggy Creek.
Right.
What was the 70s fascination with Bigfoot all about? Why did that kind of come to a head in the 70s?
I can tell you why, because 1967 was when Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin filmed the very famous, still famous footage of the Bigfoot walking across the riverbed there. In Bluff Creek, California. And that was October 1967. And then, of course, that was tattooed into everybody's consciousness if you had a television. And I think, Bigfoot is a huge, back in the 70s, Bigfoot was a huge money-making endeavor.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, even nowadays, you go to like Mount St. I live in Washington State, so everything is Bigfoot. You go to every little podunk little place and you can get a Bigfoot mug or a Bigfoot poop candy and stuff like that. But in the 70s, you could find that stuff everywhere. I mean, it was everywhere. And of course, In Search Of and all these other documentaries. Documentaries now aren't what they used to be as far as Bigfoot goes, in my opinion.
Right.
But there was a lot of sightings and footprint trackways and all that stuff. But I think the Patterson Gimlin film there, that Bigfoot Patty walking across the riverbed, was definitely the catalyst for the 70s push for a lot of this, a lot of the Bigfoot mayhem that happened in the 70s. So
and to your point,
the area now known as Ape Canyon is one of the many places in the Northwest where man continues his hunt for this elusive creature we call Bigfoot.
I was so disappointed. I saw these in the 80s. They ran on, I don't remember what station they ran on because they reran them. And then I was so disappointed in the 90s when the History Channel picked up the show and reran it because they changed the intro. They
did change the intro, yeah.
And I was like, that's criminal. Like, why would you do that?
Well, In Search Of actually is funny because if you're an In Search Of junkie like I am, and I know you know that I am, there's slight differences in the theme song from season to season.
Oh.
Yeah. It's kind of a geek thing that you might not know about for In Search Of.
No, it's similar to the Star Trek theme from the original series. Every season it changes. So yeah.
So it's I could talk about In Search Of forever because
we have been
planning. Again, it didn't come out. It came out right toward Star Wars. So
right. But we
can't talk about it.
We have plans. Tom and I've been putting irons in the fire. It's my fault. It's not Tom's fault. We've been planning to do an In Search Of live stream like this for probably a year now, and I need to get off my stick and make that happen. But we will talk about In Search Of in a dedicated live stream because I was a huge fan of In Search Of growing up as well. So, yeah.
In Search Of is what kicked off my love affair with Bigfoot. No doubt.
In Search Of it dovetailed for me with all my fascination with all the Indiana Jones mysteries and stuff. It was perfect for that. It was just like
it was great.
So
probably one of the best shows ever made.
I think it's a brilliant show, and it even, I think I told you this a few years ago, but at Dragon Con one year before Nimoy's death, he and Shatner were headlining as guests. And the panel that they did, somebody asked Nimoy about In Search Of, and it went off on this whole discussion. He was talking about, the most fascinating thing that I ever witnessed on that show was a guy who was telekinetic, and he claimed he could bend matter with his mind and stuff. And William Shatner it blew his mind and he couldn't let it go. And so Nimoy kept trying to move on after discussing it. And Shatner just kept interrupting him and being like, did you not call the guy later and follow up with the spoon? Like, how did he bend the spoon? And Nimoy finally looks over at him. He's like, Bill, let it go. Like Shatner, even 30, 40 years later, was captivated by hearing stories from that show.
That's funny.
Yeah. All right. We are we're actually 10 minutes past the 90-minute mark. Tom, are you good for another 20?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So if we want to make this go quick, we might want to kind of should we get into movies now, or do you want to still stay into television shows?
We can I tell you what, let's we can always do a volume 2 of this. Let's cap off our TV show.
Let's do that. Let's just stick with TV shows.
We can, although I think what I was saying was, let's do this final TV show for this round and move it into movies for the last 20 minutes is what I'm saying.
Oh, okay. That's fine. Great.
Okay. So let me just play this clip.
Before your very eyes, I will ride this motorcycle up this ramp, landing safely between those two elderly gentlemen. What? Oh, I can assure you, you'll be in no danger.
You're right. We'll be in Chicago.
Everybody who grew up in our generation loves the Muppet Show.
The Muppet Show can do no wrong.
Mm-hmm. I mean, again, everything now is corporately owned and consolidated and homogenized. But back then, Jim Henson, like George Lucas, was pulling his money together to make these things and sell them to the networks and try and get the funding and the ratings. And he was allowed, because it was his show, to do the kind of humor he wanted, to do this kind of send up on the 70s variety show, to like really make it something special. It was on prime time. So like the humor was family friendly, but it wasn't pandering to kids. It was almost like the first Pixar experience. It
universally appealed to everyone on the planet.
Yeah. And yet somehow they can't seem to recapture that magic.
No, they've tried to, but it just doesn't work.
No.
When you had Jim Henson at the helm, it was magic. But they've tried, but they can't do it.
Yeah. All right. I guess we'll spend the last 20 minutes in a lightning round talking about some movies that we wanted to mention. One of the ones I wanted to bring up is kind of, I feel like I've talked about this a few times, is that the 70s was the beginning. If you count Bullet in 68 as the film that lit the fuse, the 70s is the kind of foundational bedrock for what modern action movies would become, with things like Dirty Harry and Death Wish, things like that. But the difference is, as we've talked about with even the television shows, is that the action films of the 70s had more thought going into them than simply visuals, explosions, and bullets. Like, all these films were really entertaining, and there was a lot to sink your teeth into, but they also had something to say. So one of the big franchises, of course, was Dirty Harry with Clint Eastwood. I wanted to play this little clip from The Enforcer, which was the third Dirty Harry film and my personal favorite. And this is just a brief bit from that film.
All right, I'm standing on the street corner, and Mrs. Gray there comes up and propositions me. If I come home with her for $5, she'll put on an exhibition with a Shetland pony. I'm just trying to find out if anybody in this room knows what the hell law is being broken besides cruelty to animals.
Wow. Yeah. Ooh, that's good stuff.
It's good stuff. But at the same time, it's like you and I were talking about with the balance on the TV schedule, that they are doing a film that is about Dirty Harry having to deal with the sensitive bureaucracy that's encroaching into law enforcement, as well as the want to include women on the frontline police force. And one would think, based on what people say now about 70s movies, oh, it's probably the most sexist thing there is. And yet when you watch it, what you actually have is a story with a guy and a very competent cop that's just never been given a chance, this rookie played by Tyne Daly. And they form mutual respect for one another by getting to know one another, because she does know all the laws. She knows all the statutes. She knows all the regulations, the felonies, the misdemeanors. Like, she's just never been given a shot. And he just doesn't want a partner that's going to get him killed. And then the next thing you know, they figure each other out. And it's in a very credible kind of way. It's not a ham-fisted kind of like, we're going to tell you how to think. It's more like, look, you probably feel like Harry, and he kind of thinks this way. And or you might feel like Tyne Daly, and she thinks this way, but guess what? There's common ground here, and we're going to show you where that is. I think they handled that kind of stuff so well. And then, not to overtalk it, but the other one I mentioned was, of course, Death Wish.
Of course, yeah.
The original
Michael, I have to admit here, I lost about a minute of that because I went deer in the headlights. So I didn't hear what you just said, but I'm sure it was fascinating.
Oh, sorry. I was just talking about how the story was about a woman trying to get into the police force while Harry was facing a bureaucracy that was becoming far more neutered and sensitive to the issues of the frontline cops. So he didn't want a partner that was going to get him killed. But what they learned together is that she's very smart with the laws and everything. She knows her stuff. She's just not been allowed a chance. And so they have mutual respect that they find for each other throughout the telling of the film. And so the film doesn't tell you how to think. The film shows you that there's common ground between people in an organic way, is what I was getting at.
That's great. That's great storytelling.
Yeah. And then Death Wish, I will forego its sequels, but the original Death Wish is a meaty film. It's a hard film to watch, but it is a film about what happens when a person who wants to be peaceful has injustices heaped upon him, and then a neutered law enforcement agency does nothing to help him. And so he slowly becomes a hardened man. And the next thing you know, he's going out and getting justice on his own. It's a really complex. I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's raw. That's in a nutshell. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a really raw movie, but extremely good. Extremely good film.
Yeah. Let me lighten it up a little bit. May I, or are we still on this genre?
We're no. Jeremy Kerr, thank you for the super chat. He says, I came in late. Have you brought up or remember Baba Black Sheep? Might not be as well known as some of the others. Oh, I remember it for sure. We'll have it in volume 2. I'll put it that way. Your turn, Tom. Go for it. What's on your movie list, Tom?
I hope you didn't ask me something because we just went.
It's okay. We're just having some latency problems tonight. World Meta Cardboard.
Okay.
Anyone mentioned World Meta Cardboard says, anyone mentioned the lunch boxes yet? Who had what? We're focusing on film and TV tonight, Cardboard, but we'll get to that at some point. You're up, sir.
So we're done with genre, right? Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Let's go with something that was the biggest blockbuster before Star Wars.
Okay.
Which was right up my alley, and I just had my wife watch the show because she'd never watched it before.
Oh.
That movie is
Jaws?
That's right.
Ah.
That's right.
I have the image here, right here. The image.
There we go. There it is. There's Bruce.
It's hard to describe to people in a post-Star Wars world how big Jaws was as a film at the time, isn't it? It's kind of hard to explain.
Well, Jaws was the most amazing and horrifying film because when you watched the film when it came out, you didn't want to take a bath. You were so scared that you were going to get eaten by a shark that you didn't even want to take a shower. You didn't even want to drink a glass of water. It was horrible.
Yeah, it really affected a lot of people at the time. And I even remember, being born barely a year after Star Wars, but Jaws, because there was still really only those first 2 Star Wars movies. Jaws had also had a sequel come out, I believe in 78, Jaws 2.
Jaws 2, yeah. Pretty good in its own right.
Yeah, Jaws was a massive franchise that led into 3 and 4 into the 80s with questionable results. But
we can forget about 3 and 4.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that Jaws as a franchise was still one they were really exploring and wanted to keep going. And so what I guess what I'm saying is, when I was young, Jaws was a formidable movie property as well as a very well-known film.
Yes.
Yeah. It's and the only reason I didn't pull a clip from it is because everybody knows that movie backwards and forwards.
Sure. Yeah.
We all know it.
It's sad because every fisherman that pulled up a shark would just immediately kill it.
Yeah.
And there were fishermen that actually went out of their way. Didn't matter if it was a dogfish, they would kill it.
Wow.
And we had fishermen that would go out willingly looking for sharks. So, I mean, it was a great show, but as far as the shark population back in the 70s, it didn't do them any good. That's for sure.
Oops. Maybe there should have been a disclaimer. Hey, fantasy.
Yeah. But as far as movies go, I didn't follow the book at all. If you've read the book very well, but I mean, in its own universe, Jaws is almost the perfect movie.
Yeah. Perfectly filmed, perfectly paced, perfect suspense. And what a blessing.
Thank gosh they didn't show much of that bloody shark either, because if you did that really would have ruined it.
Oh yeah, it would have just become like the precursor to Sharknado. Like it would have just been kind of which is what the 3 and 4. Well, 4 actually was just a bad movie that also had a malfunctioning shark. 3 was, I don't even know what I was watching there.
I watched 3 so many times on Showtime. I want my money back.
Scott Knudsen says, I grew up in New York City in the 70s, and I'm sorry to say the depiction of the city in Death Wish is horrifyingly accurate. Yep. Urban crime.
You can say that about Seattle nowadays too.
So we have Jaws. Now, one of the films, it's not really a film so much as it is a genre that was popularized at that time. Was the Kung Fu film. The Kung Fu movie was really, really popular in the 70s. That whole genre, and nobody topped it better than Bruce Lee. So I wanted to get So I wanted to get in a few clips of Bruce Lee from his most famous film, Enter the Dragon, just to kind of give everybody some Bruce Lee-ness to the evening.
Don't concentrate on the finger, or you will miss all that heavenly glory.
You must attend the morning ritual in uniform.
Outside.
I mean, God.
That is the coolest shit ever.
I know, right? Like, I watched some interviews before the show tonight with Sammo Hung and Jackie Chan, who both were basically stunt performers at the time and worked with him in fights. And they were both confirming that, it's not a legend. He really was as fast as everybody said. Like,
no doubt. I have no doubt.
Yeah. It's not a big fish story that keeps getting bigger. Like, he was that fast.
It's funny. What do you think was bigger? Now I'm getting ahead of ourselves. We're going beyond the pale, but do you think the Kung Fu movies of the 70s were as crazy and as beloved as the schlocky ninja movies of the 90s and 80s?
I think the ninja films of the 80s and 90s, if I'm being perfectly objective now, they are beloved by a much narrower pie slice of people who
That's true.
They don't. I think a lot of people love them ironically, but the people who like myself, who like them sort of unironically because I saw them when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I do objectively know that they are not as credible by any measure as the Bruce Lee and Kung Fu films. Like,
no, that's true. Yep. Very good points.
Yeah. But I enjoy them, but I don't, how do I put this? I enjoy them, but I have respect for far fewer of them than I do the libraries of 70s Kung Fu. I'll put it that way.
No, that's a good point. That's a good point.
Yeah.
And the thing is, ninja movies are now considered just dog poop schlock, where there's the Kung Fu movies of the 70s still retain, or maybe they have gained credibility.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
They've earned a kind of long road respect where now they're studied. Because like Tarantino kind of revealed how obsessed he was with them when he was the hottest director in town. And that kind of made people go back and really look at them again. And now they're like worthy of college coursework. Whereas much as I enjoy the canon ninja films, I don't know if they're ever going to be a college course. You know what I mean? Like they're not. Yeah.
If 80s ninja movies are a college course, that is a university you don't want to go to.
Right. Tom, what were you ever exposed to movies like Shaft in the like at the time, or did you only see those later?
No, that was, well, again, I was 7 before Star Wars came around, so I wasn't into. Later I was.
Right.
I have to admit, I don't even really remember Shaft all that well.
Right. I mean, because I've as an adult, I've seen a lot of these films, because they had such an impact on culture at the time. And they've got some really great stuff in them. Like I love this exchange here from the original Shaft.
But listen, Snow White. Me and you gonna tangle sooner or later. Did you hear what I say?
Why don't you stop playing with yourself, Willie? You ain't gonna do shit.
Like there's this real cool factor. It's almost like the Shaft is sort of like is their equivalent of Dirty Harry, and he had about the 70s and
now
go ahead.
It's so interesting to watch just a little snippet of that show, and remember that a show like that back in the 70s, everybody would go watch because everybody was like, Shaft is a badass. We're going to go watch this because it is incredible and it's awesome and he's cool. And it's funny because we had movies up to, until maybe not recently. But I would say, there hasn't been a character like Shaft in a long time, and we need to bring a character like Shaft back.
Yeah, for sure. I watched these in grad school, and not for a course. I just was finally getting around to being able to watch them all, And I think I've told this to people on the live streams and stuff before, but we all have that thing that makes us laugh that we feel guilty about, and the thing that makes me laugh that I'm always hesitant to talk about, although I obviously have before, is when it's not a serious movie or an actual piece of news footage, because I can tell the difference. In an action film or a comedy, when somebody gets set on fire, I find that hilarious. I don't know why, I just do. And then if they throw themselves out a window at the same time, I'm done for like a week. So there's this scene in Foxy Brown where she gets one up back on these like Deliverance redneck guys.
You have a clip, right?
Oh, I've got it. Oh, I've got it. Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay.
Hey, skinhead.
I can't see! This is gasoline!
You know it.
I'm going to hell. Anyway,
isn't that the stunt? Isn't that the stunt man from Raiders of the Lost Ark? He was the flying wing guy.
It might be. It might be. You might be right.
It might be.
It's
good that his burns healed.
Are you talking about Pat Roach?
Yeah.
Oh, no, that's definitely not Pat Roach. You know who?
Oh, it's not?
You know who it might be? It might be the second Tiger Man.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, you're right. You're right. You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. But those films, like the Kung Fu movies, they were kind of edgy for their day, and yet they, but they were in line with what we were seeing in Dirty Harry and Death Wish, stuff like that.
I would eat that. I would eat that burger all day long.
Yeah. Yeah. That kind of action stuff. I love it.
The thing is, these characters are so not over the top, but they're serious, but then again, they don't take themselves seriously.
Right.
You know what I mean? There's kind of that weird kind of balance going on.
Yeah, it's not satire, but it's not pretentious. Like
it's a weird juxtaposition of craziness.
Yeah, yeah. One of the films that you had on your list when I saw it that I was really excited about because I hadn't thought of it and I should have, because one of my favorites, you brought up The Sting.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Which, I mean, what a great film! Like set in the 20s, but it's about this really, really cool way that they're going to con this dirtbag criminal and get everything he's got and have him, be none the wiser. They're going to set up this entire fake horse racing racket. And Robert Shaw of Jaws fame is the bad guy who knows the difference. And just the dialogue and everything in this movie, Tom, like the movie is so smartly written. I love the part in the beginning where Robert Redford's character is told by his old partner who trying to get revenge, trying to avenge him or whatever, and he's told, go find. I never remember their character names, but he's like, go find Paul Newman. Go find Paul Newman. Paul Newman knows all the tricks of the trade.
Was it Henry?
Henry, I think, yeah. And he's like, go find this guy, Henry. Henry will teach you all the tricks of the trade, and he'll help you. And when he finds him, of course, he's like passed out drunk in a carousel house, like he's just this washed up dude. And I love this exchange between Redford and Newman here.
Glad to meet you, kid. You're a real horse's ass.
Luther said I could learn something from you. I already know how to drink.
I just love the way they play that stuff, I already know how to drink, you old jackass, I think Tom's frozen. Is he back? Oh no, he's frozen. Anyway.
Yeah, sorry, I'm deer in the headlights again.
You're fine. You're fine.
But yeah, Redford and Newman, that was the dynamic duo of the early 70s. I mean, come on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a shame they never got back together and did another film like they always wanted to.
Yeah, that's too bad.
I never did figure out why they couldn't get that together. Like,
I don't know.
Everybody wanted to see it, and it just never quite happened.
Yeah, these two guys were perfect for each other as far as playing off each other. It didn't get better than that.
Yeah.
Great soundtrack too, by the way, for The Sting.
Oh yeah. great soundtrack. But I also just love the fact that it's just a really well done story. It's a very tight heist movie, or not heist, but hijinks film. It's a very, very tight, you know, film like that. And you don't have writers of that quality anymore. I don't care what people say about Knives Out and the Glass Onion series from Rian Johnson. Everyone's like, oh, his mysteries are so great. And I'm like, they're okay, but they're not great. Like they're not knock it out of the park awesome. You know, they're not like The Sting. That was smart writing.
Now there was back in the 70s, early mid 70s, there was some heavy good stuff out there.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff that I haven't even seen. I mean, if you're bored on a Sunday afternoon sometime, just Google what came out in the 70s and pick it up. It's you're gonna find something good.
Melinda and I tried to watch the movie with Roy Scheider, The Sorcerer, as it was called. That film came out like a week either before or after Star Wars and got run over. And man, like, talk about the premise of the movie is, for those of you that don't know, it's they're trying to get a truckload of nitroglycerin through the Amazon rainforest without it blowing up. And it's kind of like, you know, it's a very strange movie. It's very serious. It's very hard to watch in places because it's so gritty and dirty and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And yet when you walk away from it, whether you loved it or hated it, you always say to yourself, they'd have never greenlit that movie today. It only would have happened in the 70s. In the 70s is when that movie would have gotten greenlit and put in theaters and put in front of people. It's a shame we don't have that now.
Definitely a different crowd back then. Everything was different in the 70s. I mean, the whole was different.
Mm-hmm. KBA here is saying we could do a whole stream just about 70s murder mysteries. And that's what I was saying at the beginning of this. There's too much material to do in one go. You know, like this can be a recurring thing. I know we're kind of over the 2-hour mark. Tom, is there anything that you don't want to leave to our next discussion about this in the future that you'd like to get out now before I
no, I think that's probably a good cutoff point, because I don't want to get into 70s disaster movies unless we have enough time to talk about them.
I mean, I have enough time if you do, but I don't want to abuse your time.
Well, I think Heather's got a pizza in the oven, so
okay. Yeah. Well, then I will end on this clip for everybody, and then we will say our goodbyes. I think this is the ultimate non-Star Wars action film of the 70s. It was released a few weeks after Star Wars, but I included it because it was being produced in a pre-Star Wars world. And it's got to be like the pinnacle of 70s action and adventure.
You're talking about Deep Throat, right?
Oh, I wish that we could still put clips like that on YouTube. All right. When people say James Bond, this is one of the first images I think of is The Spy Who Loved Me.
Roger Moore for me is James Bond.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean,
it doesn't get better than The Spy Who Loved Me. That was one of the best James Bond movies ever.
It just had so much. It's had so many iconic visuals. It had so much going on. I mean, filming on location in Egypt, and Roger Moore at the top of his game with the role. You know, he'd done 2 films prior to this, which were both 70s movies that did really well. Live and Let Die, and The Man with the Golden Gun. And now here we are at the pinnacle of his Bondness. I mean, yes. I know that he did a great movie with For Your Eyes Only later. I'm not saying his other films weren't good or anything, but when you say Roger Moore, James Bond, this is what everybody thinks of first. And there's a reason. Yeah. So I just wanted to have that as kind of like a cap off to this particular edition of our discussion. But Tom, thank you so much for taking the time to join the show tonight and just talk about life before Star Wars. And
well, I think we need a Life Before Star Wars Part 2.
We do. We definitely should do that as soon as possible. And for everybody in the comments,
deer in the headlights again. I'm just gonna wait.
Can everybody see me? Can everybody?
There we go. I'm back. Okay.
Okay. But yeah. Tell everybody, Tom, where they can find you on the internet between now and our next discussion.
You can find me at IGrewUpStarWars.com. The Facebook page, it is now private, but can you find private pages if you just put in the
I don't think so. I think that's why they're private.
Name?
Yeah.
Oh.
I just meant it. I was referring to your I Grew Up Star Wars stuff. I have a link in the description of the video.
Oh yeah, go to I Grew Up Star Wars. It's just a bunch of kids' pictures playing with Star Wars stuff. You know, if you were born in the 70s and 80s, you know all about that. Your kids, your parents took pictures of you with your Star Wars stuff at Halloween and Christmas, and it's probably on my website. And if it's not on my website, it needs to be on my website. So send me an email and we can put it on your website. My website, not your website. Mine.
Well, everybody, thank you. Well, go get some pizza. Everybody, thank you for joining us tonight, and we will see you on the next video. Bye, everyone.
Bye.